What's up guys, and welcome to another Ultimate Career video. Today we are doing another review video, this time of the Asian part of the season. So we've got 5 races crammed into today's episode, starting off with Singapore and going all the way through to Abu Dhabi. Make sure to smash a like if you're glad to see this back. And for the final 2 rounds of the season, we will be doing full races. And before we get into the video itself, there you can see what the driver's standings are looking like before we get into the Singapore Grand Prix. So we are lying behind Fernando Alonso in the driver's standings. We currently have a 28-point deficit, so over a race victory behind him, and we are just 9 points ahead of Felipe Massa in 3rd. But the goal for this episode is to just try and gain as many points on Fernando Alonso as possible, and I wonder whether we can do it. In terms of the constructors, it's looking pretty ominous for the rest of the teams if your name isn't Ferrari. They have over a 90-point lead in the constructors standings. Even if they can just hold that over the course of this episode, they will come away with the constructors championship. I'm currently propping up the Williams team in 4th position, and I'm the only driver who's actually scored any points for us this season, contributing all of our 147 points. But without further ado, let's get in to the Singapore Grand Prix. So here we go then, the Singapore Grand Prix, one of the most glamorous on the Formula 1 calendar, and as you can see, the night is upon us, and qualifying here was, well, pretty much average for what we've had this season. 6th place seems to be a favourite position of ours, or around about that area of the grid. Our teammate down in 16th, but as we go then down into turn 1, you can see that we actually pass our championship rival Fernando Alonso and go up into 5th place before being completely blocked by his teammate Felipe Massa and then losing a load of ground. But then at the end of the straight of lap 1, you can see Vettel braking very early, which caught Massa out, so we managed to overtake him and then go side by side with Vettel before going round the outside of him into turn 8. So a lovely little move there. And then we go on to lap 3. You can see we've got the DRS. We're currently lying in P3, so we've got a podium position at the moment. We're gaining a lot of points on our championship rival, but you can see that we just can't get enough. We go for a lunging move on lap 5, but it just wasn't quite enough on Mark Webber. So he managed to get away from us, and there you can see our tyres were just completely gone by the end of the race. Nico Rosberg, in fact, took a victory, so very good for Mercedes, who was struggling, as you saw in the championship table. But we take P3, considerably ahead of Fernando Alonso, followed home by Sebastian Vettel. So let's see what that does to the standings then. You can see Alonso is still leading, but his gap has been trimmed to just 19 points now, with Felipe Massa, of course, still in P3. Button and Perez there for McLaren in P4 and P5, and a very good result for Rosberg, takes him within a point of Webber. For the constructors standings, you can see there is nearly a 100-point gap now up at the top for Ferrari. We are sitting in P5, and unfortunately I'm still the only driver that's contributed towards our points total. But now let's get in to Korea. Here we go then, the final Korean Grand Prix in the F1 games was in 2013, and of course on the F1 calendar. But now we get into the race, and although it was dry for qualifying, we had an intermediate condition race. We were starting way down in P9 because we had in fact gone for a bit of a wet setup. Once again, Bird starts in P16, but this time we actually got a poor start, couldn't really get any traction. But as we go into turn 1, you can see Perez there completely out braking himself, which caught out Vettel luckily, and although we slid through turn 2, we actually managed to get a pretty good run onto this massive 1.1 kilometer straight, I believe it is, passing 2 cars and then past Fernando Alonso crucially up into P5 before also getting ahead of Massa. Button moved across in the braking zone, so we had to be careful not to bash into him, but fortunately we stayed in P4 ahead of Alonso, who'd in fact followed us all the way through. But as we go on to lap 3, there was a collision up ahead between Rosberg and Button, which allowed us to come through, thank you very much, up into P2. And despite Alonso's best efforts to try and get ahead of us, he tried to make a move at the end of the straight on lap 5. We did manage to close out that P2, and once again it was a Mercedes victory, this time for Lewis Hamilton, so it's been a good couple of races for them, but it was a pretty decent result to us. Obviously cutting that championship gap once again, only by 3 points, but now the gap is down to just 16 points, and, well, it was massive after the Monaco Grand Prix, so we've got to be pretty happy with that. Massa is dropping further back in P3. There you can see Hamilton also moving up, with Rosberg getting ahead of Webber in the standings in P7, and, well, the gap up at the top just keeps on expanding. Ferrari, sooner rather than later, will surely seal the Constructors' standings, but now it's time for the Japanese Grand Prix. Suzuka in Japan is probably one of the most iconic circuits in Asia, and here we go then for round number 15 or 16, I think it's 15 of the season, and it was Fernando Alonso who stuck it on pole. We were down in P6 once again, and would you believe it, our teammates in P16. Normal service has been resumed, but as we go towards turn 1, we actually got a pretty poor start, getting passed by Rosberg, and once again it's Massa blocking us. There seems to be a little bit of teamwork involved maybe between Massa and Alonso, and that actually found us all the way down in P8 as we were going through the S complex. A lot of cars going slowly, but it's obviously so difficult to overtake in there, so we had to settle into position in P8. But as we go towards the hairpin, we make a diving move down the inside. After a slow-moving Rosberg was getting in our way. We didn't manage to pass him, but we did pass the two cars behind him, and then on the run towards Spoon Curve, going down the inside of the Mercedes driver, we get up into P5. Then at the end of lap 2, going through 130R, following the slipstream of Sergio Perez, we try and go round the outside, going wheel to wheel with him, and eventually fending him off as we get into the braking zone. And at the end of lap 2, we were up into P4. Now all the way onto lap 5, it was a four-way battle for the lead, led by Fernando Alonso, but there you can see Button and Hamilton following him through. Hamilton gets a poor exit, and we rub side pods as we go on the run towards Spoon Curve, once again running side by side with the driver, this time the other Mercedes car of Lewis Hamilton, but we do manage to just about outdo him and get up into P3, and I think that can be a reasonably successful race. Although Alonso did win, it was another podium for us in P3, losing out 10 points, but an encouraging performance from us nonetheless. There you can see then Alonso stretches his advantage to 26 points from 16. So we're over a victory away from the top of the standings now. But if we can have a couple of good races before the end of this episode, then we may be able to be back in championship contention. You can see Rosberg once again on the move up into P6 now, with his teammate Hamilton up into P8. So they are the notable changes, with Massa again just falling slightly further, 35 points behind myself now. Onto the Constructors, and Ferrari have just an unassailable lead at this moment. No one is going to be catching them. And, well, Mercedes this time actually jump Red Bull in the Constructors. They are up into P3 after a poor run of form from Red Bull. But now it's time to get into the penultimate race of the day for the Indian Grand Prix. Just like Korea, this is the final time that India featured on the Formula 1 calendar. A pretty exciting racetrack though, it has to be said. And this time it was once again Lewis Hamilton who was putting in a very good performance. He qualified on pole. We were down in P9 and Sam Bird could only manage 17th in the other Williams. But going down into turn 1, we were under pressure from Raikkonen on our outside, going down into P10 momentarily. But everyone really went wide into the first corner, and we managed to get up into P8 after Vettel was squeezed out on the inside. And there, once again, we just get boxed towards the outside. And Fernando Alonso tries to go down the inside, but just ends up sliding across the racetrack, almost taking out one on, or even both of the Red Bulls, especially Mark Webber. But we go down Webber's inside and try and fend him off. As we go side by side, he dramatically drops back, almost slams on the brakes by the looks of it. I'm not quite sure what he was doing, but we do manage to get past him. And then his teammate Sebastian Vettel was under pressure from myself, and we did manage to get past him as we come into the next complex of corners. But he wasn't going to go away on the inside, and well, eventually it was actually Fernando Alonso who came barging down the inside, but didn't manage to put us off. Then on to lap 2, as Button tried to go down the inside of Alonso's teammate Massa, he ended up completely outdoing himself. We did the little switchback move up into P5, and then Massa was our next target. On P4, we come from a long way back, but we just couldn't get it slowed down in time to get past the Brazilian. And then on lap 5, we just weren't close enough, even though we had the DRS. We had to settle into P5, but we were going to make up some ground by the looks of things on Alonso, even if it was only 2 points. We lose some ground to Massa, but fortunately he is quite a way behind us in the championship. And there you can see P5 for us this time. Not an ideal result, but given that we started in P9, it wasn't too bad. The driver's standings are now showing a 24-point lead to Fernando Alonso, with Lewis Hamilton actually jumping his teammate with victory there up into P6. Sergio Perez there in P4 gets back ahead of his teammate Button, with Massa there gaining just 2 points on us, which isn't too much to be worried about. Ferrari can close out the constructors' standings in the next round in Abu Dhabi. All they need to do is pretty much hold their advantage over McLaren. And once again, a strong performance from Mercedes sees them pull away from Red Bull, who are now under threat from myself in the Williams team. Only a 20-point gap there. But now it is time for the final race of the day at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. So Abu Dhabi in the Yas Marina circuit, commonly in fact the final race of the season, but in the 2013 season it was in fact the third to last race, and round number 17 saw Nico Rosberg take pole. I was once again sitting in P6 with Sam Bird in P16. I just feel like I'm repeating myself, but going now into turn 1, you can see we've got sort of an average start, holding our position, but trying to go around the outside of the two Ferraris. You can see Massa there got squeezed to the inside, and that is not going to be beneficial into the sweeping left-hander. And Sergio Perez also follows me through, and Lewis Hamilton there looks as if he was trying to get Fernando Alonso there boxed to the inside. We in fact end up taking both of them into the chicane, both of the AI going very slowly, but then we get pushed off circuit by Hamilton, and taking advantage of that is Alonso also. So we're up into P3 with Alonso into P4, but now on to lap 2, we try and make a move on Nico Rosberg for P2. It wasn't too difficult to get around his teammate Hamilton. It was a little bit more difficult to get past Rosberg, but we did so nonetheless. And now onto the final lap of the Grand Prix. Hamilton's managed to fight his way past Rosberg up into P3, but we are focused on the battle between myself and Jenson Button for the victory. This is the final DRS zone on the final lap. Are we at least going to make a move down the inside? Yes, we do. And we commit all the way to the inside, squeeze out Jenson Button, and get up into the lead of the Grand Prix. This could be crucial for the championship, and as we come around the final corner, we in fact secure the victory. Brilliant stuff, and a win for us. The first one in a very long time that we have taken, in fact, and that one was a sweet one. So after Fernando Alonso could only manage P5, we closed the gap down to just 9 points with 2 rounds to go. And boy, oh boy, is it going to be a great final 2 races. In other news, you can see Jenson Button has got back ahead of his teammate Sergio Perez, and Lewis Hamilton is now up to P5, so it's been a very strong end to the season for the Brit. And although their drivers only accumulated 16 points, which is the joint fewest that they have accumulated pretty much all season, Ferrari did manage to seal the constructors' standings. They have a 104-point lead, and with a possible 86 to be scored in the final 2 rounds, they take the constructors' standings, never in doubt for the whole season pretty much. And myself, pulling the Williams teams through, have managed to jump ahead of Red Bull in the constructors' standing, so we are up into P4, and it is all to play for the final 2 rounds. So make sure to leave a like if you've enjoyed this video, guys. As I said, normal service will be resumed almost in the final 2 rounds, so they're going to have separate videos, and yeah, I'll catch you guys in my next video. Take care, bye bye.